So good afternoon. Today's lesson is the last in the series on algorithms and programming for half term 3. But before we start the assessment, we've had some requests to go through the homework for this week, the CT18 homework. So first of all, I don't think I gave you a link to the homework here, so I want to show you how to find it. And then I'd like to go through some of these questions. So on the VLE, which I do have open, yeah, good, there it is. In half term 3, if I ever forget to give you a link to it, we've got activities and homework, CT13 to CT18. What is this one? CT15. So in CT15, these are the files that we need. So it says load homework activity 1 student. This one, there we go. It's probably going to do it in Thonny, so why don't we do it in Thonny today? Let's have a look. Amend the code to add the lines to define a subprogram. Plop this over here, plop this over here so we can see both. So this is just like a question, I think it's a question 4 or a question 5 in the on-screen paper 2 that you'll do later this year as a mock, or the actual exam that you'll do in year 11. You have bullet points with instructions, and you have comments with the same instructions. So it says write a definition for the subprogram called GenStats. Okay, we define it, we give it a name, and it's called GenStats. When we define it, we need to say what parameters it expects, and we put a colon on the end. And it says it has one input parameter called plist. That's what the Compete.Code.uk challenge is all about. A parameter is an input to a subprogram, so plist. So yeah, I put get stats, and it should be gen stats for generate stats. Well spotted. Then we need a for in list. Well, my advice is whenever you have a bullet point, you should always comment with that bullet point, just to keep track of what you've done. And if you're in a paper 2 exam, just tick it on the piece of paper that you've got. Right, use a for in list loop. So how about in here, write a for in list loop to iterate, repeat, go through each of the input list. Well, the input means a parameter. We get some data as an input to our gen stats procedure or function. So we can iterate for something in plist. Well, we need to think here. We have a variable in here that looks like something we're looking at. So I think it should be item. For item in list, which means we go through every value in this parameter and we do something with it. Great. Calculate the average. Right, what's going on here? Total equals total plus item. So total was set to 0. For every item in our list, we increase total by that amount. So outside of that for loop, we can work out the average. So average is going to be, well, what is the average? We mean the mean. It's the total divided by however many items are in the list. The length of the input list. So that's len, and then the name of the list. And then we need to call the subprogram. How do you call someone? You say their name. So how do you call a subprogram? You say its name. We're going to generate the stats. We need to pass something. What are we going to pass? We'll pass this global variable, weekly stats. How do we pass it? We put it in brackets, weekly stats. And then hopefully it'll work. We'll see. Oh, great, it's got the minimum, the maximum, and the average. So that's how to do question 1. Question 2. A program is needed to count the occurrences of a target item in different data structures. Here are the data structures. And it should say something occurs however many times. All right, so let's find the file. Let's open the file. And let's see what we can do. Amend the code to meet these requirements. Add a subprogram to count the occurrences of an item. So if this was a question 5 in your paper 2, this would be a question 6, because you don't have much to go with at all. You've just got like the basic structure. But we still don't need to panic. We're defining a subprogram. Dead easy. We define it. We give it a name. What should we call it? Well, how about count occurrences, or just count? What does it need to know to do its job properly? Well, it needs to know which list we're searching, and we need to know what we're searching for. So the subprogram should take two input parameters, a list and a target. So how about we call it list and target. The subprogram must display the result using string concatenation. String is text, concatenation is joining together. So it must show how many times this appears in this. So let's get started. So we'll say count so far is 0. For each item in our P list, if our item is the same as what we're trying to find, we can increase our count so far, we can spell it properly, by 1. This is equivalent to saying count so far equals what count so far was plus 1. And then once we've gone through every item, we can display the result. But you're going to get marks for comments. So put your bullet points in as comments. So let's calculate the results. The words P target appears however many times. So count so far times. Now, would this actually get the marks? I'm not convinced it would, because this isn't actually concatenating. It's just passing multiple parameters to the print function. So to actually use concatenation, we need to use the plus symbol. If we use the plus symbol, we're going to have to put our own spaces in. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. And we're going to have to be clever to avoid a runtime error. But nothing happens yet, because we need to have a single line to call the subprogram using either error or OK as a target. Let's see. So we want to call our subprogram by saying its name, count. We need to pass two arguments to be treated as the parameters to our procedure. Arguments are the inputs that we send, parameters are the inputs that we receive. So the list is going to be messages. That's our global variable up here that stores all of these. Target, this parameter, the value of it, the argument should be what we're searching for. Error. Right, will it work? No, we'll have a runtime error because we can't concatenate strings, text, and integers, numbers. Why not? Because they're different data types. How do we get round it? By converting this integer to a string. How do we do that? Well, we wrap it in brackets and pass it as a parameter to the string function, so that this function returns a string version of that argument. Let's try again. Ooh, better, but no spaces. So the word space target, space appears, space, help, however many times, and then the word times after a space. Let's try again. Hopefully that would work. I'm not going to do the extension. You can do that yourself if you want to. Today's lesson, you should be working through the CT18 assessment, please, which is a challenge to see if you can define your own procedures, define your own functions, call your own procedures, call your own functions, and within those procedures and functions, can you use lists? Can you use a for loop to iterate through each item in a list? Can you use the range built-in function for something like for I in range 10, so that I counts from 0 up to just less than 10? Work your way through, and then at the end of the lesson, I'll tell you where to submit. So when you've finished your CT18, please make sure you save it, and then close it, and then upload it to Half Term 3 Algorithms and Programming 3. And at that point, it's an ideal opportunity to check the marks that you've got so far in Half Term 3, or even to go back to Half Term 2 or Half Term 1 so that you can see the feedback and respond to that feedback. Remember, there's no real point doing an assessment unless it's either at the very end of your GCSE, or if it's during your GCSE like it is now, if you can do something about the grade that you get back. So I want you to be able to find the feedback, respond to the feedback, and address any gaps in your understanding so that we can all move forwards together. Thanks for your hard work. Do make sure you upload it, please, to Half Term 3 Algorithms and Programming 3.